I really like my team. These kids are resilient and they're tough, and they really want success. Yet I'm yet to be able to help them execute long enough with the collective. That means offense, defense, and special teams to make the jump that we're hoping to make. Anxious to have another chance at it this week. And the nature of that particular game, the ball security in the fourth quarter was a big issue, as it was versus Wake Forest, and so that particular component right now is the easiest thing to identify as what is correctable and fixable, and through emphasis, which is my job first, then to our assistants and then to the players. So increased emphasis on our saying that the ball is everything and how much that it controls outcome. That was just reinforced again this past week. But I like how hard they're trying, and I like still the progress that I'm seeing for lots of the game, not all the game, but lots of the game, and through about almost through 3/4 of that one, I was encouraged by what I thought the outcome would look like, and but still areas to improve, habits to build, consistency to grow. And having said that, at this point in the year, I think it's going to be really important for Kurt Bankert's growth to step back, and I'm going to allow Matt Johns to start the upcoming game. I think he's earned the chance through his not only his career here, but this season in leading our scout team offense, and how unselfish he's been, battling his way to back into contention at quarterback. And I think it's not only the right thing to do, I think it's the fair thing to do, and I think it's the best thing for our team. I also think it's the best thing to do for Kurt. I think he'll grow and develop more so by playing this role for a little bit, and I have to let Matt have his chance. He's done way too much for the program, and he's competed in such a manner where that's got to happen. Just from my standpoint as the head coach, so it was my decision only. I'm sure my coaches would have supported either way, but I met with both quarterbacks today, and I'm sure they'll handle it great. I haven't made it formal to the team yet, but I'm anxious for this program to continue to grow and develop, and I think it is. The outcome and the record at this point doesn't show, but my internal day-to-day with these guys is really, really enjoyable, and I think there's a super foundation being laid, at least in terms of expectations. And the execution is starting to catch up, not holding consistently enough, and especially when games are close, to keep playing at a really high level long enough in those areas. We seem to get outside of ourselves when games are close and try to do extra and more, which usually leads to more mistakes and sometimes less execution. And my job as the head coach is to really address that part and continue to work and chip away and see if we can make some improvement there. Unique challenge coming up with Georgia Tech, but I love playing option football teams. It's a great challenge. I like defending it, and I like the all-inclusive nature of what your week looks like when you go into something like that. I like the opportunity for our team to continue to grow, and yeah, ready for the next one. So I'll take questions. I'm sure there are some.
Bronco, I don't know how aware you were of it Saturday, but when you put Matt in the game, there was a really warm reception from the crowd. He's obviously wildly popular with his teammates. He's demonstrated leadership and all that stuff. And he's a fifth-year senior with a lot of other guys who aren't going to get that carrot of the bowl game, but maybe a good finish would be. How much of that goes into this, and what kind of boost do you expect the team to get?
Wow. I really I wasn't aware of the response, but I'm glad that happened. He deserves it, and I'm genuine and authentic when I say this. I mean, he is an amazing human being and a really good player and a good leader, and I think our team recognizes that, and no one wants success for him more than his teammates. However, that alone isn't why he's going to have a chance to lead the team. It's he's a capable football player as well, and I think that he should and deserves a chance to lead the team and give us a boost. But I also think it's imperative for Kurt to step back, and for his growth, I'm not sure he could take another step forward without stepping back and kind of reassess. And so all of that together has gone into the decision, or my decision.
Seemed like the punting game didn't go as smoothly the other day as it has. You kind of feeling the effects of having had, I believe, 4 different long snappers since the spring?
You know, I'm not sure it was long snappers. It wasn't our best day at the punting spot on that particular play, so we've been using tempo, especially against teams that are aggressive, meaning that the more we think a team will come after the punt, the faster we snap the ball and get aligned to not allow them to get ready. And in this particular case, there actually should have been a penalty on us. We had a player on the end man of the line of scrimmage still getting set because of we were trying to hurry, and just because of that, and the snap was not it wasn't perfect, but it was face level rather than chest level, certainly catchable, but I think the tempo and the rhythm was just slightly ahead of what both our punter and our front was ready for, and that led to a miscue. It just happened to be at a time where there were some other miscues that had happened, and as I was watching it, there seemed to be kind of a cumulative effect going on there. World record, as far as I know. But again, this particular experience for me, there's been a lot of firsts, and adapting and adjusting and coaching through them the best way that I know how at this point.
Bronco, at one point this year, Matt was 3rd on the depth chart, and a lot of it we thought was attributed to the fact that this wasn't really the offense for him. His skill set really didn't match everything. Has he made strides there? Obviously, he made that change, I think, after the North Carolina game where he bumped up to 2. Where is he now with that offense?
That's a great question. I would say still, because he hasn't had the majority of reps yet, I don't think I can answer that question fairly. What I can say, and as the head coach, I got a first-hand look of him every single day because he was running our scout offense, and I was just impressed and impressed and impressed and impressed and impressed and impressed to the point where when we had a chance to play Connor and a chance to see Kurt continuing along his current progression, it just was, I was watching Matt every single day, and he was making great throws, and he was leading his team, and he was just displaying all the things I'd like to see from a quarterback. And so that's when I started to move him up in my own mind, regardless of anyone else's mind, because I was watching him every day, and he was completing passes against our defense, and just the way he was leading. And so it just has all come to this point where it's added a level of clarity for me that it has to happen.
When you were at BYU, did you ever have a similar case with a quarterback where he took a step back and then returned either that season or the next season, a better player?
John Beck, in his first season, his freshman year, it was a really hard year, and he was kind of playing out of necessity, and I don't remember all the circumstances, but when you ask the question, there's something in there that resonates, and it took a little time, and and we might have rotated for somewhere in there, and then there was just this poise and maturity and decision making, and the game kind of slowed down, and the emphasis on just decision making and what to do with the football took a significant jump. And so I'm banking on and I'm trusting that this will not only help our team with Matt, but it will also help Kurt. And intuitively, maybe more so than factually, that's what I'm basing this on.
Just wanted to ask you about Smoke. I'm not sure expectations are the right word, but when you got here and you saw what he was capable of, how is what he's produced sort of aligned with what you might have hoped?
In the locker room after the game, I mentioned Smoke specifically. I rarely do that and single out players, but he ran hard, and he ran hard from beginning to end. I think he's done an amazing job. He's a very good football player, and he is mature. And I didn't coach him before, but he is mature and he's unselfish. And I'm not sure those are words that have been descriptors in relation to him a lot, but I like him a lot, and I like what he's done for our team, and I like his consistency and durability. Those are two separate things. I mean, he's been consistent every week when he's been given an opportunity, and he's durable for someone his size. That's a huge compliment, because sometimes skill players or players that get the ball a lot don't practice hard, don't practice frequently. They have drama issues, and we've had none of that. He's been an exemplary teammate.
Bronco, during the presser on Saturday, you talked about maybe the inconsistency from your team being total volume of plays more so than half to half.
Yes.
With a team like Georgia Tech, depending on the game script, the
Yeah.
volume of plays could
Yeah.
go either way.
Yeah.
Does that lend itself to a different offensive game plan approach?
Yes, it does. And there's a delicate balance in there between trying to generate enough points and keep Georgia Tech from having the number of possessions, or if we're able to play good enough defense and getting them off the field. And that script is, you kind of have an ideal going in, but that each time we've played Georgia Tech or Air Force or others, that kind of morphs as it goes, and you're never quite sure until you get into the situation. So preferably we'd love to get ahead. We'd love, and this is versus any option team, we'd love for them to have to play from behind, and we'd love for them to not have the ball very long. And they would want just the opposite, to be ahead and have the ball as long as they can, which means converting third and shorts, and I think that's pretty standard.
Should we assume that Devontae Cross will be running that offense in practice this week? And what do you see from him long term?
That's our hope and our plan is to have that athleticism and experience at that position to help us get ready. It won't simulate it perfectly, but he did a really, really nice job helping us getting ready for Louisville, to the point where we could actually assess what the schematics might look like and what they might look like against Louisville's personnel. And so that would be similar here. And you never can simulate the look identically or exactly, but that part will be pretty close. Long term, to be determined. Devontae's a really good athlete, and multiple positions that he could play, and where he might be suited to fit our team best. I would say still that's something that we're considering.
One of the biggest question marks entering the year was developing depth on the offensive line. You've played 10 games. You've basically used the same 5 guys. They've allowed 31 sacks. The run game hasn't been great. You haven't subbed in a lot of guys to try to find improvement. Where are you right now with the depth? I know you've addressed it in this recruiting class. Where do you see that position moving forward? How important is that to solidify that spot?
It's essential, as the deficits are two of the main deficits in the program as we just assess roster management and taking over. The very first was the management of the quarterback position and having succession planning there. Right after that, or equal to that, was the same at offensive line. There isn't now the next class of 5 juniors ready, with the next class of 5 sophomores ready, with the next. I mean, it's not even close to that. And so we are addressing. It hasn't been addressed yet. We have some excellent commitments in our classes ready. We need to work on some more. We'll need to do that at least 2 more years in a row to then have the plan in place for the type of consistency that we'd like there. Where we rotated at least 2 other players fairly consistently in this past game. R.J. Proctor getting significant reps, and one was a little bit more forced because of Jackson Mateo's injury. So I would say R.J. Proctor is the one that's benefiting most or getting the most look or most experience. We would love to do that with 2 or 3 others, but the depth, quite frankly, isn't there to allow that. And so there's some younger players we're working hard not to play, and then the recruiting classes, not just one, are going to have to take effect. This isn't a program that the roster management is just turnkey and now here you go. This is now massive efforts to build succession planning is the best way that I put it, to where each and every year you're just reloading, not rebuilding. And some of the youth that we're playing right now defensively, it will be the equivalent of that, at least offensively, next year, as you look at some of the players moving on. And so there's still a level of inconsistency with just the personnel management part of this that's going to take some time, and that does not mean we won't have success or can't have success. So I'm not presenting it as such, just that this cycle is, we have a lot of work to do in terms of staffing the team.
Bronco, obviously you've had a lot of success against option teams. Is it your way of attacking the old traditional way where you shut down the dive and then force the pitch and get that guy, or are there different ways of attacking?
And there are different ways, and rarely against a coach as good as Paul Johnson and schemes can you use the same plan every year, because they adjust really well, and there's a lot of kind of in-game adjustment that goes on with this system, and the counting of numbers and formational adjustments and different things and type of plays being run. And so, the worst mistake really, a less than effective approach is just to play it one way. But what you do have to be is assignment sound, and the fullback adds consistency. If you can't take away the fullback, the time of possession just overwhelms you. You never get the ball. But there's a reason you put your best player at quarterback in the option, and he's the one that usually makes the entire thing go. And so if you're going to err anywhere, it'd be erring on the side of making sure the quarterback is handled. But you can't put all your focus there, otherwise you never get the ball back because of the fullback. And then if those two things happen to be handled well, then the volatility and really where the big chunks come, which is the third phase, which is the pitch and the play actions. And but rarely do you get to those unless you've gotten to the other ones. So I think sequentially that'd be the best way for me to explain my view of defending the option. And so we'll do our best to again address all those things.
Bronco, it seems like there's a number of guys on this team that have played big roles this year that you would describe as having wallowed here before you guys got here. Andrew Brown, Keon Johnson, a bunch of guys. How much have you noticed that the younger guys who might have felt like they were wallowing have kind of noticed and maybe stepped up their effort to become part of this?
I think one of the things when you have a new coaching staff is opportunity, and that doesn't mean different coaches take over programs in different ways, and sometimes the heir apparents just move on, and other times it's more open tryouts, so to speak. And what we're finding is there are players that are very capable here, and Andrew and Keon would be two examples. What you also find, and what we're uncovering, and I think you all probably can see it, is when a player has a chance now from wallowing to emerge, emerging is different than consistency. And so you'll see flashes in these roles these kids are taking on that are new and different, and the volume of plays is new and different, and their production is new and different. But also they're learning how important consistency is, and going the wrong way at a critical time gives up a first down, or maybe running the wrong route at a critical time gets the quarterback hit. And so there are growing pains along the way, and that really is affecting, and I'm working really hard to get the team as consistent as possible. Those two things are almost opposing forces of lack of experience from wallowing to now emerging, and then the next step from emerging is consistent play, regardless of number of plays. And we're still not to that point of being able to put an entire game together on both sides of the ball and special teams, and have that hold from beginning to end. I do think there's been progress, and I see it more consistently and for longer. But there are still, as we can see, and you can see, mistakes that happen that reflect inexperience and youth.
With Dante Wilkins, Kaiser, Bradshaw, Rainey, Quinn, you have veterans and experience kind of in the middle of your defense. On the outside, you got Terrell, Peace, Mack, Hamback, Stephen Wright sometimes, guys who have not played Georgia Tech. What is the challenge with the young guys this week to, I guess, to teach them but not overload them this week?
No, it's just that. I think the question is fair, and I would actually add Dante into the mix of the outside, because even though he's an upperclassman, he hasn't played tons and tons of football for UVA. Exactly right. And so really when it comes to experience, the way that I think it would be fair to say Micah and Zach and Quinn and Kelvin. So, but that's been basically the case all year, other than when Zach's hurt, Landon Word is in there. So really 8. So if Zach is healthy, those 4 have had a seasoning experience of playing Georgia Tech, and there's no way to simulate it. And so what that will lead to, or lend itself to, is lack of consistency, volatility, and possibility of big plays. And so the key then is to put a plan in place that's simple enough and effective enough that we can execute it based on our current personnel against a scheme like that. But that's been our challenge the whole time, and I welcome the challenge. But this is just the next offense to do that against, which is unique and different.
It seems that one of the penalties that really hurt you the other day was the hands to the face
Yes.
by Moore.
That
Hearing a
was
lot
his
more.
second.
Huh?
That was his second one of the year, same penalty.
What you hadn't heard very much about that penalty in recent years.
Yeah.
Are they looking for it more, and how does it occur?
Yeah. So the way that they call the penalty, and again it was his second, which again it's rarely called on a defensive player. Usually more on offensive players than not, but it's the penalty is called if there's continual hands to the face. So that means that he was rushing the edge and was extending his arm to get the edge and missed the guy's shoulder pad. It went up and got underneath the guy's chin and the bottom of his face mask. And so as he was trying to rush the edge, that was his focal point, and it stayed in contact with the guy's face mask, and that's why they called it. And so it was there for about 3 steps, and there it is.
What? Told you. You didn't tell me.
You had mentioned when you took Kurt on that one of the big things that you attracted to him about was the fact that he had 2 years
Yes.
of eligibility, and you probably wouldn't have looked at him if he just had just 1. Is that emphasized when you talk to him that, hey, this is a
Sure.
2-year process? How did he take the news, and how does he kind of appreciate the fact that he's still got another year to figure this out?
Yeah. He was disappointed, just as anyone would be that's a competitor, but my simple message to him is I love him, I believe in him, and this is still the beginning, not the end. Meaning that I'm investing in his growth as much as I'm investing in Matt John's growth. Meaning that I think he'll be better because of stepping back, and I don't think he could continue under the same circumstances and make the jump that's necessary. I think there needs to be a stepping back and reassessing and reframing before he goes back in. And the next part to this is when you consider our backup quarterbacks right now, in Connor and Matt, there's a giant jump now to a true first year. And so there very well could be another transfer come in to then try. I mean, if not, then your backup quarterback for next year is a first year. And most coaches, including myself, would prefer a player in between that. And so this isn't necessarily as much about Kurt as it is our entire team, our entire program. And so Matt, I think, will help Kurt. But then again, when you're thinking about the whole roster management issue, it's not ideal to have a senior and then a first year. And that's reflective of the offensive line. It's reflective of the quarterback. It's reflective of a lot of positions on our team. And so you're going to see through the upcoming years of recruiting, we have a lot of decisions we have to make in terms of when to take a transfer and where to get us maybe to bridge a gap. And that could very well happen at this position.
I have 2 questions. Couldn't Kurt ostensibly have 2 more years if he got that medical red shirt for last year?
In looking into that, and I don't want to speak too much on that, but in a medical red shirt, it has to be a loss of 2 full years in relation to injury. And so a red shirt has to have been caused by a season-ending injury, and then there has to be another year lost by a season-ending injury. And how that will fit, if it's possible, I'm sure we'll do all the work to do that. If it's not possible and the documentation doesn't support it, then we won't. But I haven't looked into it far enough yet. I just know the rule on two full years lost by injury.
And does Georgia Tech present unique challenges because they played, everyone thinks Justin Thomas is their best player, and he didn't even play last week. I don't know how similar the way the guy who played to Justin Thomas, but what kind of challenge does that present in preparation?
Option is option, and it's very difficult. And most likely, if you've been at a place long enough, like Coach Johnson has been at Georgia Tech, they're not talking about the same issues we have. There's a clear plan where it's this quarterback, and then if he's not in, it's this quarterback. If this running back's not in, there's another running back, and there's a developmental plan that's going on where it's more seamless, moving from one to another. And usually that means there's been enough repetition to where there's not the giant drop-offs that a lot of times happen in newer programs. And so I think that their program is mature enough to account for that.
I don't imagine there was much humorous about the game the other day, but did you see how furious Jackson Mateo was at having to miss two snaps out there?
Yeah, I did, and so when he was out there on the field, knowing how much he cares about playing, I asked him sarcastically, "You just taking a rest, or you really hurt?" And he said, "Give me one play, and I'll be back." So even in that moment, I'll remember that forever. It might be the only thing I remember about the game, and it's been that way through my career. We were watching film today of past games and different things. I don't remember a single call or the game at all, the score, but I remember an interaction here or there, and so I'll remember that. He was already mad that we were out there because that means he would have to come out of play, and yeah.
You got the majority of your recruiting class before the season started, but you still have picked up
Yes.
some notable guys here of late, particularly one on Saturday.
Yep.
I know you can't talk about them specifically, but what has been your message to them that you've continued to have success despite the record not being?
It's really hasn't been that difficult yet, meaning that families are and young people are pretty clear, and they do their research, and all they're saying is, okay, which is holding more weight, 11 years of success and consistency, or what we're seeing through 1 year. And what they're seeing is actually, and what they're hearing from our players is really optimistic and positive. And the number of wins, no, but the success or the progress they're feeling, yes. And so they're based on an investment portfolio, kind of they're early investors in a great opportunity. That's the way they're viewing it. And they're getting in at the time where they can make a real difference, which is actually why I came, is to make a real difference. Not being promised a return right away, but knowing that I could contribute to something of real significance. And they're seeing that, and they like that. And it's real. And then I have really good coaches that relationships are everything to us. And these kids are connecting at a really high level with my coaches and want this experience for what they think it will be and what I think it will be. And so it's been fun, and it uplifts me to come in after talking to the team in the locker room and talking to the coaches in the locker room, and then come out and a family's in tears and committing to join. So put that in context of coming off the field in that game and then coming in and have a family so excited to join. It's a really cool thing and encouraging.
Take our last question from Jeff.
In a lot of Virginia's games against Paul Johnson's teams, Georgia Tech has come out and had a lot of success on the first couple series, and then it seems like the defense gets adjusted to the speed of the option and settles down a little bit. Was that your experience against Air Force and Georgia Tech, that is the defense particularly vulnerable right out of the gate?
Wow. Yes is the easy and clearest answer. The more experienced your team, the less so. The less experienced team, the more so. And so, yeah, we're vulnerable to that. However, in the past 3 or 4 or 5 games, we've actually started pretty well defensively in terms of 3 and outs, and y'all can do the research. But and so I think that our practice model is doing a pretty nice job to help us start pretty quickly early. Whether that'll help enough versus this opponent, we'll find out. But that's pretty typical, regardless of who any option team plays, and trying to get a feel for that. And so we're aware of that and know and recognize that challenge. But I mean, this is now, let's see, 5 years at New Mexico, plus then 13 total at BYU. Not every year was against Air Force, but that's 15-ish years straight of defending all different kinds of option football, and some more effectively than others. But there's been a pretty good learning lab of what might work and what might not. And all that does is give us a reference point to start from for this particular team in this particular situation, and that's helpful, but it doesn't guarantee success.